Should a company tailor its learning to fit the generation gap in the company?
You know, the generation gap question is an interesting one, and I'd say that more than tailoring learning to generational segments in the workforce, I think personalized learning kind of takes care of how we don't really need to look at generational gaps when it comes to learning. We can look at personalized learning as a way to help people regardless of what generation they're in. So for example, we talk a lot in the book about this over-obsession with millennials in the workplace, right? I mean, when I was at LinkedIn, we were 70% millennials, and that was, you know, that was, I think, an example of a company where there's a lot more of one generation than another. But what about, I mean, there's this great book out called The 100-Year Life by Linda Grattan and Andrew Scott from the London School of Economics. And they write about the fact that we are no longer living in a three-phase life anymore. It used to be, you know, education was the first phase, then we had career and family in the middle phase, and retirement at the last phase. And if you think about how people are living longer, especially for the age group 50 and older, what we're realizing is boomers don't necessarily, either they financially can't stop working when they wanted to, or I think even more importantly, when they do have the choice whether they want to stop working or not, they're choosing that they want to work, because it's going back to this purpose. It's like people want to have purpose and meaning in their lives, and if they're living longer, if when you're 50, you look and you say, hey, I might have 20 more years of working or more ahead of me. What do I want this phase of my life to look like? And what do I want to learn? And how do I want to develop those skills? I would say that's the reality of the situation, yet most workplaces are not taking that into account. They're saying we should focus on millennials and what they need to learn and grow in their careers, and they're just beginning in their careers. But what about the 20 years of or more that people in the older generations might have? What if we were to focus more of our attention and our energy on that segment of the population? Think of how much expertise and mastery of skills they have to offer, and we're not taking advantage of that. And I think that there's some creative ways we can think about that too, because one of the arguments I hear a lot is that, oh, well, older workers are just so much more expensive, and so companies don't want to hire them. They want to hire the less expensive labor of, you know, the new college grads. But I would argue that that if we think about the more flexible workplaces are becoming now, and then the future people can work where and when and how they want, giving that demographic more flexibility in how and when they work is probably more important to them than the salary, you know, that they're making. So maybe there's some trade-offs that we can make, but it's all about thinking about things differently. We're stuck in these old mindsets, and yet we have a new, our work environment has changed dramatically, and we're not making adjustments to actually address those. We're just kind of stuck in these old models of working. So I think there's huge potential in thinking about multi-generations and how they can better work together in the workforce, in the workplace of the future.
That leads right into peer-to-peer knowledge and sharing that. The young teaching the old teaching the young.
Absolutely. And in fact, one of the things that I think, I love peer-to-peer learning, and I don't think that companies have taken advantage of it at all in the way we think about learning and work. And what we know about how people learn, we have a couple of stories in the book where we talk about, you know, world-class designers who have learned more from their peers than they did in any university setting, you know, which is amazing. And all the untapped mastery of all these people, these smart people that you've got in your workforce, and yet they're sitting right next to you, and yet you're not taking advantage of what they know and what you can learn from them, because we haven't really set up a learning environment like that. You might have examples of a lot of the tech companies that I know and that I've worked for will have things called tech talks, where engineers or designers or product managers will teach what they know to their peers in the workforce, which is great, but I think that it's been kind of on a limited basis. Imagine if we really encourage peer-to-peer on a large scale. It can be very impactful, especially in the flow of work. I mean, when you get a team of people together to solve a real business problem at work and peers are working together to solve those problems, that's an incredible example of how powerful learning in the flow of work can be. And then back to your idea of, you know, young teaching the old and the old teaching the young. One of the biggest issues I see in the workforce today are the younger workforce are becoming managers much younger than ever before, yet they haven't had so much time even in the workforce, let alone as a manager, to really understand what it means to be a manager and a leader at a company. But imagine the boomers who have had a lot of experience in leadership and management and being in the workforce, maybe mentoring those younger workers who haven't had a lot of time on the job and are struggling with some of the basics, like how to have effective one-on-ones, how to give their employees feedback, how to have career conversations with their employees. Those are basics of being a good manager, yet a lot of young managers haven't had a lot of experience with that. Imagine if they could get some mentorship from some of the workers who have had that experience, so that we all work together to make the workforce a better, more productive place.